The blood on her dress had dried brown by the time she stumbled into Knights Ferry, California, one hand pressed against her ribs where they still ached from his boot. Lydia Jensen had walked 15 miles through the Sierra Nevada foothills in the October heat of 1875, her feet blistered raw inside boots never meant for such a journey. But every step carried her farther from the man who had promised to love her and had instead spent 3 years teaching her what hell looked like in human form. She had waited until Martin passed out drunk after beating her for burning his dinner. Then she had taken nothing but the clothes on her back and the small amount of money she had hidden in the hem of her skirt, money saved penny by penny from the egg money he sometimes forgot to collect. The main street of Knights Ferry stretched before her like salvation itself, dusty and golden in the late afternoon sun. The Stanislaus River ran nearby. She could hear it, and the covered bridge she had crossed to enter town was the longest she had ever seen. Buildings lined the street, most of them rough-hewn wood that had weathered to gray, but they were civilization, they were people, they were somewhere Martin did not know to look for her yet. Her legs trembled as she walked, her vision swimming at the edges, and she knew she must look like something dragged behind a horse. But she kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering the look in Martin's eyes when his fists came toward her face. She made it to the front of the general store before her knees gave out entirely. The wooden planks of the walkway rushed up to meet her, and she put her hands out to catch herself, scraping her palms raw. The pain was distant, unimportant compared to the roaring in her ears and the way the world tilted sideways. Through the buzzing in her head, she heard boots on wood, fast and heavy, and then strong hands caught her shoulders before she could collapse completely. "Madam, easy now. I have got you." The voice was deep, calm, the kind of voice that expected to be obeyed but did not demand it through force. Lydia tried to focus on the face that swam before her eyes, sun-bronzed skin, dark eyes that held concern rather than anger, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. He wore a cowboy's hat pushed back on dark hair, and a bandana around his throat was coated with trail dust. "When did you last eat?" "I do not." Lydia's voice came out as a rasp. Her throat was so dry. "Yesterday morning, I think." The man cursed softly, nothing profane, just a quiet expression of concern. He shifted his grip, supporting her weight easily as he guided her to sit on a bench outside the store. "Stay right here. Do not try to stand." He disappeared into the store, and Lydia leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. The world still spun behind her eyelids, but at least this way she did not have to watch it. He returned quickly, pressing a canteen into her hands. "Drink slowly, small sips." While she obeyed, he unwrapped a cloth bundle that proved to contain bread and cheese. "Eat this. Not too fast, or you will be sick." Lydia's hands shook as she accepted the food, and tears pricked at her eyes. Kindness felt foreign after so long without it. "Thank you. I can pay you." She started to reach for her hem, but he stopped her with a gentle hand on her wrist. "No need for that. Anyone can see you have had a rough time of it." His eyes traveled over her face, and she knew what he saw. The bruise on her cheekbone had faded to yellow-green, but the split in her lip was still healing, and she could not hide the way she held herself, protecting ribs that screamed with every breath. His jaw tightened. "You running from someone?" Lydia froze, the bread halfway to her mouth. Fear flooded through her, cold and sharp. "I should not have come here. I should keep moving." "Hey now." His voice gentled further. "I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not going to send you back to whoever did this to you. My name is Bennett Masters. I work the ranch just outside town, but I also help the sheriff when he needs it. If someone is after you, the law can protect you." "The law did not protect me when I was married to him." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Lydia forced herself to take a bite of bread, chewing mechanically. It tasted like sawdust, but her stomach growled with need. "The law says a man can discipline his wife as he sees fit." Bennett's expression hardened. "The law is wrong about that. Not every lawman agrees with it, and Sheriff Morrison here does not hold with men beating women, marriage or not." He settled onto the bench beside her, careful to leave space between them, not crowding her. "Where did you come from?" "Columbia, up in the gold country." Lydia took another small bite, then a sip of water. The spinning in her head was starting to slow. "I walked through the night and most of today. That is nearly 20 miles through rough country. Respect colored his tone. You must have been desperate. I was tired of being afraid in my own home. Lydia looked at him properly for the first time. He was perhaps 27 or 28, a few years older than her own 24 years, with the lean, strong build of a man who worked hard for his living. His clothes were worn but clean, and his gun belt sat easy on his hips like he knew how to use it but did not look for excuses to do so. There was something solid about him, something that made her want to trust him, even though trusting men had brought her nothing but pain. Martin Jensen is my husband. We have been married 3 years, and he has been hitting me for 2 years and 11 months. The first time was because I asked him not to spend our rent money on whiskey. After that, it did not matter what I did or did not do. He would find a reason. Bennett listened without interrupting, his dark eyes steady on her face. When she finished, he nodded slowly. You did the right thing leaving. A man who raises his hand to a woman is no man at all. He paused, seeming to consider his words. Do you think he will come after you? Yes. The certainty sat like lead in her stomach. Martin does not like to lose. He will see this as me taking something that belongs to him. When he wakes up and finds me gone, he will track me. He is good at tracking. He used to hunt in the mountains. Then we need to make sure you are somewhere safe when he arrives. Bennett stood, offering her his hand. Can you stand? There's a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She takes in women who need a place to stay. No questions asked. You will be safe there, and I will talk to Sheriff Morrison. Lydia accepted his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. Her legs still felt unsteady, but the food and water had helped. I do not have much money. I cannot afford. Mrs. Patterson does not turn away women in need. Bennett kept hold of her arm, supporting her as they started down the street. If it helps your pride, you can work for your keep once you're feeling stronger. She always needs help with cooking and cleaning. The boarding house was a 2-story building painted white, with a wide porch and flower boxes in the windows. It looked like something from a better dream than the ones Lydia had been living. Bennett helped her up the steps and knocked on the door, which was opened by a plump woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and kind eyes. Bennett Masters, what have you brought me, Mrs. Patterson's gaze moved to Lydia, and her expression softened with understanding. Oh, you poor dear. Come in right now. Her name is Lydia Jensen. She walked here from Columbia, and her husband is likely to come looking for her. Bennett's voice was low, serious. She needs a place to stay where she will be safe. Mrs. Patterson's lips pressed into a thin line. Another one of those, is it? Well, he will find no welcome here if he comes around. Come along, Lydia. Let us get you upstairs and cleaned up. You look like you could use a proper bath and a soft bed. Lydia looked back at Bennett, uncertain. He gave her an encouraging nod. You will be safe here. I'm going to talk to the sheriff now, and then I will check back on you tomorrow if that is all right. Why are you helping me? The question burst out before Lydia could stop it. You do not know me. I could be lying about everything. Bennett met her eyes, and something in his expression made her breath catch. No, you are not lying. I can see the truth of it written all over you. He touched the brim of his hat. Besides, it is the right thing to do. That is reason enough. Mrs. Patterson ushered Lydia inside, clucking over her like a mother hen, and through the window Lydia watched Bennett walk back down the street toward the sheriff's office. Something tight in her chest loosened just slightly. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she might survive this. The next week passed in a blur of healing. Mrs. Patterson fed her 3 meals a day, insisted she rest, and provided her with clean clothes that actually fit. The other women in the boarding house all had their own stories, their own reasons for being there, and none of them pried into Lydia's business beyond offering quiet sympathy. Lydia's ribs stopped aching quite so badly, the bruises faded further, and the split in her lip healed over. She started helping with the cooking and cleaning as she had promised, grateful for the work that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Bennett came by every afternoon to check on her. He never stayed long, just stopped in to make sure she was all right and to update her on what the sheriff was doing. Sheriff Morrison had sent word up to Columbia, letting the law there know that Lydia was under his protection in Knights Ferry. If Martin came looking for her, they would be ready. The knowledge should have comforted her, but Lydia knew her husband too well. Martin would not announce himself. He would not walk up to the sheriff's office and demand his wife back. He would watch and wait and find his moment, and when he struck, it would be fast and vicious. She tried to explain this to Bennett one afternoon as they sat on the porch of the boarding house. He had brought her a book, a collection of poetry he thought she might enjoy, and she held it in her lap like the treasure it was. Books had been forbidden in Martin's house. He said they gave women ideas. "I appreciate what you and the sheriff are doing. Truly I do," Lydia said carefully. "But Martin will not come openly. He will wait until he can catch me alone, and then he will drag me back. Or he will kill me for running. Either way, I do not think the law can stop him." Bennett was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the street. A wagon rolled by, the driver calling out greetings to people he knew. Knights Ferry was a small town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. That could work in her favor or against her, depending. "You are probably right that he will not come openly," Bennett said finally. "Men like that are cowards at heart. They only feel strong when they are hurting someone weaker than them." He turned to look at her. "But he does not know this town, and he does not know the people here. That gives us an advantage. If he shows up, someone will notice a stranger asking questions about you." "And then what?" Lydia's voice was sharper than she intended. "He will not just leave because people noticed him. He will wait. He will watch. He will learn your routines and the sheriff's routines, and he will find his opening." "Then we make sure there is no opening to find?" Bennett leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I've been thinking about this. The boarding house is safe enough, but only as long as you stay inside. You need to be able to move around, to live your life. You cannot be a prisoner here." "I would rather be a prisoner here than with Martin." "You should not have to be a prisoner anywhere." The intensity in Bennett's voice made her look at him. "You deserve to be free, Lydia, truly free, not looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life." "That's a nice thought, but I do not see how it is possible." Lydia ran her fingers over the cover of the book. "Unless he dies, Martin will always be out there somewhere, and even if I divorce him, which would take money I do not have and would ruin what little reputation I have left, he would still come after me. He told me once that if I ever left him, he would hunt me to the ends of the earth." Bennett's jaw tightened. "If he comes for you, he will have to go through me first." The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Lydia's heart did something complicated in her chest, a flutter of fear and hope tangled together. "You barely know me. Why would you risk yourself for me?" "Because it is right. Because no one helped my mother when she needed it, and she died at my father's hands when I was 12 years old." Bennett's voice was flat, controlled, but Lydia could hear the old pain beneath it. "I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help a woman in a situation like hers, I would. So here we are." Lydia reached out without thinking, covering his hand with hers. "I'm sorry. No child should have to see that." Bennett looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. "And no woman should have to wear the marks of a man's fists." He turned his hand over, gently squeezing her fingers. "We both know what it is to survive, Lydia. Maybe that means we can help each other." She should have pulled her hand away. It was too familiar, too intimate for people who had known each other barely a week. But his hand was warm and calloused and steady, and Lydia could not remember the last time a man's touch had not made her flinch. She let herself have this moment, this small connection, before common sense reasserted itself, and she withdrew her hand. "Tell me about the ranch where you work," she said, changing the subject to safer ground. "Is it a large operation?" Bennett let her redirect the conversation without comment. "Large enough. The McIntyre Ranch runs about 3,000 head of cattle. I am the foreman, which means I manage the other hands and make sure everything runs smooth. It is good work, honest work. The McIntyres are fair people to work for." He paused. Actually, Mrs. McIntyre mentioned they could use help at the ranch house. The woman who was doing their cooking and housekeeping just got married and moved to Sacramento. If you are interested, it would pay better than working here at the boarding house, and you would be out of town, harder for your husband to find. Lydia considered it. The idea of leaving the relative safety of town felt frightening, but Bennett was right that she could not hide in the boarding house forever. And if Martin did come looking, he would check the boarding house first. The ranch might actually be safer. Would I live there? Yes, there is a small cabin for the housekeeper, separate from the main house. You would have your own space. Bennett's eyes searched her face. I would be nearby. My cabin is just past yours, and there are always ranch hands around during the day. You would not be isolated. The thought of having her own cabin, her own space that was truly hers, was almost painfully appealing. I would like to meet them, the McIntyres, if they are willing to consider me. I will arrange it. Bennett smiled, the expression transforming his serious face into something warmer. Mrs. McIntyre will like you. She has a good sense about people. 3 days later, Lydia found herself riding in Bennett's wagon out to the McIntyre ranch. The road wound through golden hills dotted with oak trees, and the November air was crisp and clean. She had not been on a wagon since leaving Columbia, and every bump made her tense, but Bennett kept the horses to an easy pace and did not seem to notice her nervousness. The ranch house was a sprawling structure of wood and stone, clearly added onto over the years as the family grew. Corrals and outbuildings spread out behind it, and in the distance, Lydia could see cattle grazing on the hillsides. It was prosperous and well kept, the kind of place that spoke of hard work and good management. Eleanor McIntyre met them on the porch, a tall woman in her 50s with silver threading through her auburn hair and a direct gaze that seemed to see right through Lydia's careful composure. Her husband Duncan stood beside her, weathered and solid as an oak tree, his handshake firm when Bennett introduced them. "So you are the young woman Bennett has told us about," Eleanor said, gesturing for Lydia to sit in one of the porch chairs. "He says you are looking for work." "Yes, madam. I can cook and clean, do laundry and mending. I am a hard worker, and I learn quickly." Lydia kept her voice steady, professional. She needed this job. She needed the safety and independence it represented. "Can you handle cooking for a household of hungry men? Because I will tell you right now, Bennett and the hands pack away food like it is going out of style." Eleanor's eyes crinkled with humor. "I cooked for my father and 3 brothers growing up, madam. I know how much men can eat." Eleanor laughed outright at that. "Good answer." She sobered, her gaze moving to the fading bruise on Lydia's cheekbone. "Bennett told us a bit about your situation. You should know that if your husband comes looking for you here, he will not be welcome. We protect our own on this ranch, and if you work for us, you are one of ours." The lump in Lydia's throat made it hard to speak. "Thank you, madam. That means more than I can say." "Eleanor, please. None of this madam business makes me feel ancient." Eleanor stood. "Come on, let me show you the cabin. If you like it, the job is yours." The cabin was small but well built, with a wood stove, a bed, a table and chairs, and even a bookshelf. Windows on 2 sides let in plenty of light, and someone had planted roses beside the front steps. It was more than Lydia had dared hope for, a space that could be entirely hers. "I will take it," she said. "When would you like me to start?" "How about tomorrow?" Eleanor smiled. "That gives you time to gather your things and say goodbye to Mrs. Patterson. Bennett can bring you out in the morning." They settled on wages that were more than fair, and Lydia felt the tight knot of anxiety in her chest loosen another degree. She would have work, a place to live, and people around her who seemed genuinely kind. Maybe, just maybe, she could build a new life here. Bennett was quiet on the drive back to town, but it was a comfortable silence. Lydia watched the landscape roll by and let herself imagine what it would be like to wake up in that little cabin, to cook breakfast in a kitchen where no one would scream at her if the eggs were not perfect, to live without fear. "You are smiling," Bennett observed. "That is good to see." Lydia had not realized she was smiling. "I'm just thinking about the cabin. It seems almost too good to be true." "It is real. You can have good things, Lydia. You deserve them." Bennett glanced at her. "I'm glad you will be at the ranch. It will be easier to keep an eye out for trouble with you there." "Is that the only reason you are glad?" The question slipped out before Lydia could think better of it, bold and flirtatious in a way she had not been in years. Bennett's hands tightened on the reins, but he was smiling. "No, that's not the only reason. I've enjoyed getting to know you this past week. I like talking to you." "I like talking to you too." Lydia's heart beat faster. This was dangerous territory. She was still married, still technically belonged to Martin, even though the thought made her sick. But sitting here beside Bennett in the golden afternoon light, she could almost believe in the possibility of something better. She started work at the McIntyre ranch the next morning and quickly fell into a routine that felt almost normal. She cooked 3 large meals a day, kept the main house clean, and did the mending and laundry. Eleanor was easy to work for, treating Lydia more like a valued employee than a servant. Duncan was quiet but kind, and the ranch hands were respectful, tipping their hats to her when she brought lunch out to them in the fields. Bennett stopped by the kitchen every morning for coffee before riding out to supervise the day's work. Those morning conversations became the highlight of Lydia's day. They talked about everything and nothing, books and weather and the little dramas of ranch life. Bennett told her about growing up in Texas, about learning to ride and rope before he could properly read. Lydia told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her mother who had died when she was 16, about her father marrying her off to Martin, because he said she needed a husband to care for her. He thought he was doing the right thing, Lydia said one morning as she poured Bennett a second cup of coffee. Martin seemed like a good prospect. He had his own house, a job at the mine. He was charming when he wanted to be. My father never saw the other side of him. Does your father know what Martin did to you? Bennett accepted the coffee, his fingers brushing hers briefly. No. He died 2 years ago. My brothers moved to Oregon after that. I have not heard from them in over a year. Lydia sat down across from him, cradling her own cup. Even if they knew, I do not think they would believe me. Martin is very good at seeming reasonable to other men. I believe you. Bennett's eyes were serious. I want you to know that. Whatever happens, I believe you, and I'm on your side. Lydia felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough. Thank you. That helps more than you know. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Thanksgiving came and went, celebrated with a huge feast at the ranch that included all the hands and their families. Lydia cooked for 2 days straight and loved every minute of it, loved being part of something warm and communal. Bennett sat beside her at dinner, and when he smiled at her across the table, her heart did that complicated flutter again. She was falling in love with him. The realization came to her one night as she sat in her cabin, mending one of Eleanor's dresses by lamplight. She was falling in love with Bennett Masters, with his steady kindness and dry humor, with the way he looked at her like she was someone worth protecting and respecting. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure because she was still married, and Martin was still out there somewhere, and loving Bennett meant putting him in danger. December brought rain to the foothills, cold and steady. Lydia stood on her cabin porch one evening, watching the drops patter into the mud, and sensed him before she saw him. Bennett materialized out of the darkness, his coat dripping wet, his hat pulled low. You should not be out in this, Lydia scolded, but she stepped back to let him onto the porch. You will catch your death. I wanted to check on you. The creek is rising fast. If it floods, we will need to move the cattle to higher ground, and I might not get back here until tomorrow. Bennett pushed his hat back, water streaming from the brim. I wanted to make sure you knew so you would not worry. I would worry anyway. Lydia realized what she had admitted and felt her cheeks heat. That is, everyone would worry, Eleanor and Duncan and the others. Just them? Bennett stepped closer, and suddenly the porch seemed very small. What about you, Lydia? Would you worry about me? Yes. There was no point in lying. Yes, I would worry about you. Good. Bennett reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. Because I worry about you all the time. I worry that Martin will show up. I worry that you will decide to leave and I will never see you again. I worry that you will think I am just another man trying to control your life. I do not think that. Lydia's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. You have never tried to control me. You have only tried to help me. I want to do more than help you. Bennett's thumb traced the line of her jaw. I want to be part of your life, Lydia, not just as a friend or a protector. I know the timing is terrible. I know you are still married and still healing from what he did to you. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way. Lydia's breath caught. She should step back. She should tell him this was impossible. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I feel it too. God help me, Bennett, I feel it too. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, giving her every chance to pull away. Lydia did not pull away. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his wet coat, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt something other than fear when a man touched her. She felt hope. She felt joy. She felt the possibility of a future that did not include pain. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bennett rested his forehead against hers. I will wait as long as you need, however long it takes for you to be free of him. I will wait. What if I am never free? Lydia forced herself to voice the fear. What if Martin finds me first? Then I will deal with Martin. Bennett's voice was steady, certain. Whatever it takes, Lydia, I meant what I said. He will have to go through me. The rain pounded on the roof, drowning out any response she might have made. Bennett kissed her once more, quick and sweet, then stepped back. I need to go. The cattle will not move themselves, but I will come back as soon as I can. Be careful. Lydia caught his hand, squeezing tight. Please be careful. Always. He squeezed back, then disappeared into the rain. Lydia went back inside and tried to sleep, but her mind raced with possibilities. She loved Bennett. Bennett loved her. But Martin stood between them like a shadow, and she knew with terrible certainty that the confrontation was coming. Martin would find her eventually. Men like him always did. The confrontation came 2 weeks later, on a cold December morning when frost silvered the grass and the sun had not yet cleared the mountains. Lydia was in the kitchen starting breakfast when Eleanor burst through the door, her face pale. There's a man at the front gate asking for you. He says he's your husband. Eleanor's voice was tight. Duncan is talking to him, but Lydia, he looks like trouble. Lydia's blood turned to ice. The wooden spoon fell from her nerveless fingers and clattered on the floor. Martin, he found me. Bennett is out with the herd, but I have sent someone to fetch him. Eleanor moved to Lydia's side, gripping her shoulders. You do not have to see Martin if you do not want to. We can send him away. He will not go away. Lydia's voice sounded distant to her own ears. If you send him away, he will just come back. He will wait and watch, and he will hurt someone to get to me. Then we will have the sheriff arrest him. For what? He has not done anything yet, and I am still his wife. The law will say he has a right to take me home. Lydia forced herself to breathe, to think. I should talk to him. Maybe I can convince him to leave peacefully. You do not have to face him alone. Eleanor's grip tightened. I will be right there with you. They walked together to the front of the house. Through the window, Lydia could see Martin standing beside the gate, talking to Duncan. He looked the same as always, tall and broad-shouldered, his sandy hair neat under his hat. He looked like a respectable man, a hard-working husband concerned about his missing wife. No one looking at him would guess the violence that lived beneath his skin. Lydia steeled herself and walked out onto the porch. Martin's gaze snapped to her immediately, and she saw the anger flash in his blue eyes, even as his expression arranged itself into concern. Lydia, thank God. Martin moved toward the gate, but Duncan shifted to block him. I have been searching everywhere for you. When I woke up and found you gone, I feared the worst. Are you all right? I'm fine. Lydia stayed on the porch, keeping distance between them. I left, Martin. I'm not coming back. His face hardened. Do not be ridiculous. You are my wife. Your place is with me. These people have obviously filled your head with nonsense, but you belong at home. Home? Lydia's laugh was bitter. That place was never home. It was a prison, and you were my jailer. I would rather die than go back there. Lydia, you are being dramatic. I know I have lost my temper a few times, but what husband does not? You can be trying sometimes, but I am willing to forgive you for this little stunt if you come back now. Martin's voice took on a cajoling tone, the one he used when he wanted to seem reasonable. Come on, sweetheart, let us go home and forget this ever happened. No, the word came out strong, certain. I am not going anywhere with you. Our marriage is over, Martin. His mask cracked, fury blazing through. You do not get to decide that. You are mine, Lydia. You made vows before God, and you will honor them. The way you honored your vow not to hurt me? Lydia took a step forward, her own anger rising. You broke our marriage, Martin. You broke it the first time you hit me and every time after. I owe you nothing. Martin's hands clenched into fists. You self-righteous little witch. I should have beaten that pride out of you years ago. When I get you home, I will finish the job. Duncan moved to stand fully between Martin and the house. That is enough. The lady has told you she is not going with you. Time for you to leave. This is between me and my wife. You have no right to interfere. Martin's voice rose. Lydia, get down here right now, or so help me God. Or what? Bennett's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He appeared from around the side of the house, moving with controlled purpose. You will what exactly? Martin turned to face this new threat, his eyes narrowing. Who the hell are you? Bennett Masters, I am the foreman here. Bennett stopped beside Duncan, and the two men made a solid wall between Martin and the porch. "I am also the man telling you to leave. Mrs. Jensen does not want to go with you, and you are trespassing. Mrs. Jensen is my wife, and I'm taking her home." Martin's hand moved toward the gun at his hip. Bennett's hand was faster, settling on his own gun in a clear warning. "I would not do that if I were you. I am a fair shot, and I have witnesses that you went for your gun first." The two men stared at each other, the air thick with potential violence. Lydia's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. If they fought, someone could die. If Bennett died trying to protect her, she would never forgive herself. "Martin, please!" She put all the desperation she felt into her voice. "Just go. Let me have this. Let me be free. You do not even love me. You never did." Something ugly twisted Martin's face. "Love? You think this is about love? This is about a man's rights. This is about not letting some ungrateful woman make a fool of me. You think you can just walk away? You think you can embarrass me like this and there will not be consequences? The only consequence here will be you ending up in jail. Or worse," Bennett said, his voice hard. "Lydia is under the protection of this ranch and the law in Knights Ferry. You are not taking her anywhere. The law will side with me. She is my wife. The law will side with whoever tells a better story, and I think the bruises you left on her will tell a pretty clear story." Bennett had not raised his voice, but the threat was unmistakable. "Leave now while you still can." For a long moment, Martin did not move. Lydia could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing his options. Then he spat in the dirt and took a step back. "This is not over, Lydia, not by a long shot. You can hide behind these men for now, but I will get you alone eventually. And when I do, you will pay for every bit of trouble you have caused me. If you come back here, I will shoot you myself." Eleanor's voice rang out clear and cold. She had moved to stand beside Lydia, and she held a rifle with the ease of someone who knew how to use it. "I do not abide men who hurt women. You want to threaten someone. You threaten me to my face." Martin's gaze moved between Eleanor and Bennett and Duncan, and whatever he saw made him think better of pushing further. "You are all going to regret this. All of you." He turned and stalked to his horse, mounting up with angry, jerky movements. He wheeled the horse around to face them one last time. "Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, Lydia. It will not be for long." He rode off at a gallop, and Lydia's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. Eleanor set the rifle aside and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Bennett was there a moment later, kneeling in front of her, his hands gentle on her arms. "You are safe. He is gone." Bennett's voice was low, soothing. "You did so well, Lydia. You were so brave." He meant it. Lydia could barely get the words out. "He will come back. He will kill me if he can. He will kill anyone who gets in his way." "Let him try." Bennett's eyes were fierce. "I meant what I said, Lydia. He will have to go through me, and I will not go down easy." Duncan had been watching the road where Martin disappeared. Now he turned back to them. "I'm riding into town to talk to Sheriff Morrison. We need to make sure the law knows about this. Bennett, keep a close watch until I get back." Already planning on it, Bennett helped Lydia to her feet. "Come on, let us get you inside." The rest of the day passed in a haze. Sheriff Morrison came out to the ranch and took statements from everyone. He promised to keep an eye out for Martin, but Lydia could see the doubt in his eyes. Until Martin actually committed a crime, there was little the law could do. They all knew it, even if no one said it out loud. That night, Bennett insisted on sleeping on Lydia's porch, his bedroll spread across the boards and his rifle within easy reach. Lydia protested that it was too cold, that he would be uncomfortable, but he refused to budge. "I will not risk him getting to you," Bennett said flatly. "Not after those threats. He will come back, Lydia. We both know it. The only question is when." Lydia gave up arguing. She lay in her bed and listened to Bennett moving around outside, settling in for a long, cold night, and felt tears slide down her temples. This good man was risking everything for her, and she did not know how to deserve it. Martin came back 3 nights later. Lydia woke to the sound of footsteps outside her cabin, slow and careful. Her heart slammed into her throat, and she sat up in bed, straining to hear. Bennett had been sleeping on her porch every night, but she did not hear him now. Fear iced through her veins. What if Martin had hurt him? What if Bennett was lying out there injured or worse? She heard the scrape of the door latch being tested, and panic flooded her. Martin was trying to get in. She stumbled out of bed, looking wildly around for something she could use as a weapon. Her fingers closed around the poker from the stove just as the door crashed open. But it was not Martin who stood in the doorway. It was Bennett, his face grim in the moonlight. "Stay inside. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone but me or Eleanor." "What's happening?" Lydia whispered. "Martin is here. I saw him circling the cabin. I'm going to end this." Bennett checked his gun, his movements quick and efficient. "Stay inside, Lydia, no matter what you hear. Bennett, please, do not go out there. He will kill you." Lydia grabbed his arm, desperate. "Please, we can wait for Duncan and the sheriff." "There's no time for that. He's here now, and if I do not stop him, he will find a way in." Bennett cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I love you, Lydia Jensen. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. I love you too." The words tore out of her. "Bennett, I love you. Please do not leave me." "I'm not leaving you. I'm protecting you. There is a difference." He kissed her hard and fast, then pulled away. "Lock the door." He was gone before she could protest further, disappearing into the darkness. Lydia stood frozen for a heartbeat, then scrambled to close and lock the door. She pressed her ear against the wood, trying to hear what was happening outside. For a long moment there was only silence. Then Martin's voice, slurred with drink but no less menacing, cut through the night. "So the cowboy thinks he is a hero. Think you can steal another man's wife?" "I did not steal anyone. She left you because you are a monster." Bennett's voice was calm, steady. "Leave now, Jensen. This is your last warning." Martin laughed, ugly and bitter. "Or what? You will shoot me? I do not think you have it in you, cowboy. You look like the type who plays by the rules." "I play by one rule: protect the people I care about. She is not worth it, you know. Lydia was always a worthless little thing, crying all the time, flinching at every loud noise. I tried to toughen her up, but she just would not learn. You beat her. You terrorized her. You made her afraid to exist in her own home." Bennett's voice hardened. "And you are going to pay for it." Lydia heard the shuffle of boots, the sound of fists hitting flesh. They were fighting. She clutched the poker tighter, her whole body shaking. She wanted to run out there, to help Bennett, but she knew she would only distract him and make things worse. The fight seemed to last forever, and no time at all. She heard grunts of pain, the sound of bodies hitting the ground. Then a gunshot cracked through the night, impossibly loud, and Lydia screamed. She tore open the door, the poker raised, ready to defend Bennett if he was hurt. But Bennett was standing, breathing hard, his shirt torn and blood on his lip. Martin lay on the ground 10 feet away, clutching his leg and cursing. "I told you to leave," Bennett said, his gun still trained on Martin. "I told you to walk away, but you could not let it go, could you? You had to push." "You shot me!" Martin's voice was high with pain and rage. "You will hang for this." "I defended myself and the woman under my protection from a man who broke into her home with intent to do harm. The law will back me up." Bennett did not move, did not lower the gun. "You are done hurting her, Jensen. It is over." Lights were appearing in the windows of the main house and the bunkhouse. People were coming, drawn by the gunshot. Duncan arrived first, pulling on his coat as he ran, a rifle in his hands. He took in the scene quickly, his expression hardening when he saw Martin on the ground. "What happened?" "Jensen broke into Lydia's cabin. We fought. He went for his gun, and I shot him in the leg." Bennett's voice was flat, factual. "He needs a doctor, but he also needs to be in jail." Duncan nodded. "I will send someone for both. Bennett, you all right?" "I'm fine." Bennett finally looked away from Martin, his eyes finding Lydia where she stood in the doorway. The hardness in his expression softened. "Lydia, are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine, but you—" Lydia moved toward him, reaching up to touch the blood on his lip. "He hit you." "I have had worse." Bennett caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. "It is over, Lydia. He cannot hurt you anymore." Martin was still cursing from the ground, his threats increasingly wild and incoherent. Sheriff Morrison arrived within the hour, summoned by one of the ranch hands. He listened to everyone's statements, looked at the forced door of Lydia's cabin, and made his decision. "Bar. Martin Jensen, I am arresting you for trespassing, attempted kidnapping, and assault." Once that leg is fixed up, you will be sitting in my jail until the circuit judge comes through." The sheriff hauled Martin up, none too gently. "If you are smart, you will take whatever sentence the judge gives you and stay far away from Knights Ferry after you serve your time." Martin spat blood. "She is my wife. I have a right." "You have no rights here except to a trial." The sheriff cut him off. "If I were you, I would start thinking about what you are going to say to the judge, because from where I stand, you do not have a leg to stand on. No pun intended." They took Martin away, still cursing and threatening. Lydia watched him go and felt nothing but relief. It was over. She was free. The next few days were a blur of sheriff's visits and statements and worrying about what would happen when Martin went to trial. But Bennett was there through all of it, steady and sure. He testified alongside her, telling the judge exactly what Martin had done, what he had threatened, how he had forced his way into Lydia's home. The circuit judge was a stern man with gray whiskers and no tolerance for men who hurt women. He listened to all the evidence, looked at the medical records documenting the injuries Martin had inflicted on Lydia over the years, and made his ruling. Martin Jensen was sentenced to 5 years in prison for assault and attempted kidnapping. Furthermore, the judge granted Lydia's request for divorce on the grounds of cruelty and issued a restraining order preventing Martin from coming within 100 miles of her once he was released. When the gavel came down, Lydia felt like she could breathe fully for the first time in 3 years. She was free, truly, legally free. Bennett was waiting for her outside the courthouse, leaning against the porch rail. When he saw her face, he smiled. "It is done?" "It is done." Lydia walked straight into his arms, and he held her tight. "I am free, Bennett. I'm actually free." "I told you we would deal with him." Bennett pulled back enough to look at her face. "Now we can think about the future. Our future, if you want that." "I want that more than anything." Lydia reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "I love you, Bennett Masters. I want to build a life with you." "Then marry me." Bennett said it simply, no hesitation. "I know it is fast. I know you just got out of a terrible marriage, but I love you, Lydia Jensen. I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night. I want to build something good and strong and lasting with you, so marry me." Lydia felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Bennett whooped and picked her up, spinning her around right there on the courthouse steps. People stared, but Lydia did not care. She was free, and she was loved, and she was going to marry the best man she had ever known. They married on a cold January day in 1876, with Eleanor and Duncan as witnesses and half the town in attendance. Lydia wore a blue dress that Eleanor had helped her sew, and Bennett wore his best suit, looking so handsome it made her heart ache. They spoke their vows in the little church in Knights Ferry, and when the pastor told Bennett to kiss his bride, he did it with such tender joy that Lydia knew she had made the right choice. Their life together unfolded with the gentle rhythm of the ranch. Bennett taught her to ride, patient and encouraging, as she learned to handle a horse. Lydia continued to cook for the McIntyres, but now Bennett came home to their cabin every night, and they shared dinner together by lamplight, talking about their days and making plans for the future. Spring came, and with it, wildflowers that turned the hills into a riot of color. Bennett took her riding through the meadows, and they had picnics by the creek where he taught her to fish. Summer brought long days and warm nights when they sat on their porch and watched the stars come out. In July, Lydia discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified to tell Bennett at first, afraid of how he would react, afraid that pregnancy would somehow change things between them. But when she finally worked up the courage to share the news, Bennett had picked her up and spun her around, just like he had on the courthouse steps. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "A baby, Lydia. Our baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy? I am the luckiest man alive." Bennett set her down carefully, his hands on her waist. "You've given me everything, Lydia. A home, a family, a reason to wake up smiling every day. Of course I'm happy." Their son was born in March of 1877, a squalling, red-faced boy with Bennett's dark hair and Lydia's gray eyes. They named him William, after Bennett's grandfather. Bennett was an attentive father from the first moment, walking the floor with William when he cried, changing his diapers without complaint, and singing him nonsense songs that made Lydia laugh. "You are good at this," Lydia told him one night as she watched him rock William to sleep. "Being a father. I am just trying to be the father my father never was." Bennett looked down at the baby in his arms, his expression soft. "I want him to grow up knowing he is loved. I want him to see how a man should treat a woman by watching how I treat you. I want him to know that strength is not about how hard you can hit, but about how much you can care." Lydia fell in love with him all over again in that moment. The years flowed by like the Stanislaus River, steady and sure. They had 2 more children, a daughter they named Rose in 1879, and another son, Thomas, in 1882. The cabin that had seemed so spacious when Lydia first moved in grew crowded with children and noise and laughter, so Bennett built them a house, a real house with a second story and a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Duncan McIntyre retired in 1883, and Bennett bought the ranch from him with money he had saved over the years. The McIntyre Ranch became the Masters Ranch, and Lydia and Bennett ran it together, partners in every sense of the word. Eleanor stayed on as a beloved neighbor and friend, doting on the children and teaching them to read from the books in her extensive library. Lydia learned to shoot, to ride as well as any ranch hand, to rope and brand cattle. She became strong in ways she had never imagined, but it was a different kind of strength than Bennett had talked about that night with baby William. It was the strength of knowing her own worth, of building a life on her own terms, of loving and being loved in return. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she thought about Martin. She had heard he was released from prison after serving his full sentence. He had drifted east, back toward Missouri, and she had never heard from him again. She hoped he had found peace, or at least stopped causing pain. But mostly, she did not think about him at all. He was part of a past that felt increasingly distant, a bad dream that had ended the moment she stumbled into Knights Ferry. Bennett kept his promise to be there through everything. When Rose came down with scarlet fever at age 4 and they nearly lost her, Bennett sat up with Lydia for 3 nights straight, holding their daughter and praying. When William broke his arm falling out of a tree at age 10, Bennett set the bone himself, his hands steady and sure. When Thomas announced at 14 that he wanted to be a doctor instead of a rancher, Bennett supported him without question, sending him east to school and paying for his education. In the evenings, when the work was done and the children were in bed, Bennett and Lydia would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over the hills. Bennett would take her hand, lacing their fingers together, and Lydia would lean her head on his shoulder. They did not always talk. Sometimes the silence was enough, the simple presence of each other saying everything that needed to be said. "Do you ever regret it?" Lydia asked one night in the summer of 1891. They were watching their children play in the yard, William home from college for the summer, and Rose and Thomas chasing fireflies in the dusk. "Marrying me? Taking on all my troubles?" Bennett looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Regret? Lydia, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and these children and this life we built together, that is everything. How could I possibly regret that? I just sometimes think about what your life might have been like if I had never come to town. You could have married someone without a violent ex-husband, someone who did not need rescuing. You did not need rescuing. You rescued yourself when you walked away from him. I just helped make sure you could stay away." Bennett turned to face her fully. "And I did not fall in love with some imaginary woman who did not exist. I fell in love with you, Lydia. With your strength and your courage and your kindness. With the way you laugh at my terrible jokes and the way you look when you are cooking, concentrating so hard on getting everything perfect. I fell in love with all of you, including the parts that were hurt and healing. So no, I do not regret a single moment." Lydia kissed him there on the porch, with their children playing in the yard and the crickets singing in the grass. She poured 17 years of love and gratitude into that kiss. And when they pulled apart, Bennett was smiling. "I love you," Lydia said. "I will love you until the day I die, and probably beyond that." "Well, that is convenient, because I plan on loving you just as long." Bennett pulled her close, and they sat together watching the stars come out, counting their blessings in the form of 3 healthy children and a ranch that prospered and a love that had weathered every storm. Years continued to pass in their gentle rhythm. William graduated from college and came home to help run the ranch, bringing with him a sweet-tempered girl named Sarah, who became a beloved daughter-in-law. Rose grew into a beauty with a fierce intelligence, marrying a lawyer from Sacramento and giving Bennett and Lydia their first grandchildren. Thomas became a doctor, as he had always dreamed, opening a practice in San Francisco but visiting often, his medical bag always ready to tend to any injuries or illnesses on the ranch. Bennett's hair went gray at the temples, then silver all through. Lines appeared at the corners of his eyes, laugh lines earned from decades of smiling. Lydia's own dark hair streaked with white, and her hands grew rough from years of work. But Bennett told her she was more beautiful than ever, and the way he looked at her said he meant it. In the spring of 1902, they celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary with a party that brought together family and friends from all over California. The house was full of noise and laughter, grandchildren running through the rooms and Eleanor holding court in the parlor with stories of the old days. Bennett and Lydia slipped away in the middle of the celebration, walking hand in hand to the creek where they had shared so many picnics over the years. 26 years, Bennett mused, skipping a stone across the water. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you stumbled into town, and sometimes it feels like I have known you my whole life. I was terrified that day, Lydia admitted. I thought Martin would find me and drag me back, or that I would die alone in the hills. I never imagined I would find this. She gestured at the landscape around them, at the ranch in the distance, at the life they had built. I never imagined I would be this happy. You deserved happiness. You always did. Bennett pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist. I'm just glad I got to be part of giving it to you. You did not just give me happiness. You gave me freedom. You gave me a family. You gave me a life worth living. Lydia reached up, touching his face with familiar tenderness. You gave me everything, Bennett Masters. Well, you gave me everything right back. Bennett kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. I love you, Lydia. That has never changed, and never will. They walked back to the house together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. Inside, their family waited, the family they had built from love and determination, and the refusal to let the past define their future. Lydia looked at Bennett and saw not just the man who had protected her all those years ago, but her partner, her best friend, the love of her life. That night, after all the guests had gone home and the grandchildren were asleep in various bedrooms, Lydia and Bennett lay in their bed and listened to the house settle around them. Bennett's arm was around her shoulders and her head rested on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Thank you, Lydia said softly. For what? For seeing me that day in Knights Ferry, for helping me, for loving me, for building this life with me. Lydia felt tears prick at her eyes, the good kind that came from being overwhelmed with gratitude. For making sure I was never hurt again. Bennett tightened his arm around her. You never have to thank me for that. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You made me better than I ever would have been without you. We made each other better. Lydia tilted her head up to kiss him. That is what love does. It makes us better. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and when Lydia dreamed, she dreamed of wildflowers and starlight and Bennett's smile. She dreamed of their children and grandchildren, of the ranch spreading out under wide California skies, of a future that stretched bright and golden before them. The years continued their steady march. Bennett and Lydia grew older together, their love deepening with each passing season. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, births and weddings, the ordinary joys that made up a life well lived. They faced hardships too, droughts and illnesses, and the challenges that came with running a large ranch, but they faced them together, and that made all the difference. On a warm afternoon in June of 1910, Lydia stood on her porch and looked out over the land that had become her home. She was 60 years old now, her hair completely white, her face lined with the evidence of a life lived fully. Bennett stood beside her, 64, and still strong despite the years. Their children and grandchildren were scattered across the property, tending to various chores or playing in the yard. Do you remember the first time you stood on this porch? Bennett asked, following her gaze. Every detail. I was so scared and so hopeful all at once. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could find safety here. Lydia leaned into him. I found so much more than safety. We both did. Bennett kissed the top of her head. I found my purpose, my home, my everything. A rider appeared on the road, kicking up dust as he approached. As he drew closer, Lydia recognized their grandson James, William's eldest son. He was waving a telegram, and her heart jumped. Telegrams usually meant news, good or bad. James dismounted and bounded up the steps. "Grandpa, Grandma, this just came for you. It is from Thomas in San Francisco." Bennett opened the telegram, his eyes scanning the words. A slow smile spread across his face. "Thomas and Catherine are coming for a visit next week, and they are bringing someone for us to meet. A young lady Thomas is courting seriously." Lydia laughed with delight. Another wedding to plan. How wonderful. The family gathered that evening for dinner, and the house rang with conversation and laughter. Lydia cooked, as she had always loved to do, preparing the recipes that had become family favorites over the decades. Bennett carved the roast, telling stories that made the grandchildren giggle. It was ordinary and perfect, exactly the kind of evening Lydia had once dreamed of, but never thought she would have. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and the children sent to bed, Lydia and Bennett took their customary walk around the property. The moon was full, bathing everything in silver light. They walked in comfortable silence, their steps in sync after so many years together. "I have been thinking," Bennett said as they paused by the fence overlooking the pastures, "about how our story began, about that day you came to Knights Ferry." "What about it?" Lydia leaned against the fence, looking up at the stars. "I think about how easily it could have gone differently. If I had been out on the range that day instead of in town, if someone else had found you first, if you had gone to a different town." Bennett shook his head. All these little moments that could have changed everything? But they did not. We found each other, and everything else followed from that. Lydia took his hand. "I do not believe in much, but I believe in that. I believe we were meant to find each other." "So do I." Bennett pulled her close, and they swayed together in the moonlight, like they were dancing to music only they could hear. "I would find you in any lifetime, Lydia, in any town, in any situation. I would always find you. And I would always let you." Lydia rested her head on his shoulder. "Because you did not just save me, Bennett. You helped me save myself. You showed me what love was supposed to be. You gave me a reason to be brave." They stood together for a long time. Two people who had found each other in the chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage of her old life. The ranch slept around them, their family safe in their beds, and the future stretched ahead full of promise. Bennett had made sure Martin would never hurt her again, but more than that, he had given her the tools to make sure no one would ever hurt her again. He had given her strength and confidence and the knowledge that she was worth protecting, worth loving, worth everything good in the world. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Lydia felt the weight of gratitude and love and peace settle over her like a warm blanket. This was happiness. This was home. This was everything she had ever wanted and more than she had dared to dream. The rest of their years together unfolded with grace. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1926, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. Bennett was 80 years old by then, Lydia 75, and they moved slower than they once had, but the love between them burned as bright as ever. Bennett passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1928, his hand held tight in Lydia's. She sat beside him as the sun rose, tears streaming down her face, but also smiling, because she had been given the gift of loving him and being loved by him for 52 years. Not many people were that fortunate. Lydia lived another 5 years, surrounded by the family she and Bennett had created. She told their story to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, wanting them to know where they came from, wanting them to understand that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that courage could be found in the darkest moments, that good men still existed in the world. When she closed her eyes for the last time in the autumn of 1933, she did so with a smile on her face, because she knew that wherever Bennett was, she would be joining him soon. They would find each other again, just as they always had, just as they always would. The Masters Ranch continued on, passed down through the generations, and with it the story of how it all began. The story of a woman who walked 15 miles through the mountains to find freedom, and the cowboy who made sure she could keep it. The story of love, born from compassion and strengthened by adversity. The story of two souls who found each other and built something lasting. In the end, it was a story with a happy ending, the kind that Lydia had stopped believing in until Bennett showed her it was possible. They had their happily ever after, earned through courage and trust and the simple decision to love each other through everything life threw at them. And that, more than anything, was the legacy they left behind. Not just the ranch or the family, but the proof that love could conquer fear, that kindness could overcome cruelty, that even the most broken hearts could heal if given the right care. Their story became a part of the land itself, woven into the hills and the river and the covered bridge, a reminder to everyone who came after that happy endings were possible if you were brave enough to fight for them.